Hi guys, Gaming and Sport A47 here, and I'm going to be talking about Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon and why I think it's the most innovative game in the series. Let's start off with the combat shift, going from beat 'em up to being the first turn-based JRPG game in the series. Before, it was always just that beat 'em up fighting style, which was absolutely fine. Some games were better than others at it. But I feel like this was a really good effort with the turn-based style. You've got your basic attack, which you can choose to use. You've got the skills, which you have to use mana points to use. So once you've used up all those points, you can't do those attacks anymore unless you use items to get, the mana back. Probably not explaining myself that well, but that is how it is. Then there's the guarding, which you can do. You can use allies called pound mates to fight with you, which you have to use the currency from the game currency, not real life currency, to use them. And there's also items that you can use, health items, attack items, and other effects as well. So sort of paralyzing or stun or whatever, disorientation, all these sort of things. And I thought it was a really good effort. And then there's the system where you've got weaknesses and strengths, so you can resist and certain features, and you're more susceptible to others. Same with the enemies. I thought that was a nice touch as well. And you are able to, if you do certain side missions, you're able to do more different types of attacks within the game, and different playable characters become unlocked. Well, there's one extra playable character you can unlock through the side contents and not part of the story, which was quite cool. But yeah, also, as you've noticed, that because it's the JRPGs, you're able to play as multiple different characters while in combat, which I think was a really nice feature, because you've got all these different types of attacks. And also, I forgot to mention the jobs. You've got the different jobs that you take, and because of those different jobs, you've got the different styles of attack and different positives and negatives, and you level up as well, as you would have seen from this gameplay. So more attacks become available as you move on, and that's a good system. I mean, it's always been part of the Yakuza way, sort of the more you play and the more you level up, the more becomes available to you. But I feel like in this turn-based system, with this system with all the different types of jobs, I feel like it actually works even better than it had worked in the previous games. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention on the innovation of the games. The second thing was the protagonist change, going from Kiryu in every single game to Ichiban. I actually prefer Ichiban. I think he was a refreshing change. I think Kiryu is a good character. He's a stoic character, just an impressive hero, really. But, well, kind of hero, as much as you can be in the Yakuza. But I feel like Ichiban is just, I find him more believable character. I mean, neither of them are massively believable, but I find him, he's more human. He's less sort of perfect with everything. He makes silly mistakes. He's not as good in combat. And he's even more loyal than Kiryu, and I just find him funnier as well. So I personally preferred Ichiban. I know a lot of people prefer Kiryu, but I think it was good to have a change anyway, regardless of which character you prefer. But also, I noticed there was a big tone shift in this game compared to the other games in the series. There was much more characters. Almost all the main characters were not actually in the Yakuza, other than Ichiban, and obviously there's a few others, but I would say 70% of the main characters in the game, were not part of the Yakuza, which obviously, if you played any of the other games, was a massive shift from what we're used to. And because of that, the characters were, I'd say, more interesting. There was more to them. There wasn't, in previous games, there's been characters which are a bit too similar to each other. You've just got differences in the sense of, some of them are more brash than others, some of them are more aggressive than others. And it's a little bit good versus bad, sort of a bit basic in some areas. Again, I'm not saying that the games don't have good stories, they do, but I feel like the tone was getting a little bit samey all the time. I mean, Yakuza 0 was for me probably the best story before this game, and also I liked the Judgment story as well, the first one, the spin-off game. I thought that had a really good story, so those are probably my three favourite stories, but this one ultimately is my favourite one just because I felt there was, more interesting things going on in the story and not just sort of your standard Yakuza betrayal type thing or greed type thing going on, which I liked. There was some political themes going on in the game which were interesting, obviously with Bleach Japan involved and Ryo Aoki using that as sort of a smokescreen to what he really wanted. And Ryo Aoki as a character is one of the most interesting villains there's ever been in a Yakuza game, probably the most interesting in my opinion. And I thought he was really well implemented into the game, obviously seeing why he was the way he was, what he'd been through early on in the game, so it kind of made that much more interesting. You don't normally know that many reasons as to why characters do what they do, with the exception of Yakuza Kiwami, where you understood why Nishiki went the way he went. But yeah, I think that was also a big reason as to why this game was so good. But going back just briefly to the combat here, I feel like as good as it was with the turn-based system, they improved it quite a lot in the next game, Infinite Wealth. And they just, as you can see here, you can actually see the attacks. There's just much more detail into it, so you can see sort of the direction of where your attacks are going. You can see what areas are being covered, so whether it's an attack for one enemy or several enemies, and you can see what areas are being covered, which I liked. You can do tag team attacks, and also, like you saw earlier, you can use objects, and you can use you get more damage done when it's within proximity, which I liked. But so if that was added in the first game, I think that would have been a nice touch as well. But I still feel like just because the problem with this game, as much as it was really, really good, and I'm referring to Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon now, not Infinite Wealth, as much as I think it was one of the best games, it was one of my favourites, I think it would have been the best if they had a better levelling up system for just your standard players, because I felt like they treated it as the expectation that you had to play loads and loads of the game to be able to get much further into the game, and I didn't really think that was a good idea. I think some people just want to focus on the story and not much else, so I feel like they should have had difficulties in the game, and I think that would have been more enjoyable, because especially when you're the first playthrough of the game, when you're not as used to the game, I feel like it could be a bit frustrating. You could get stuck on some areas and then end up having to try and level up for hours and hours, which is not really ideal for fun, in my opinion. But other than that, and other than the combat being slightly basic, still enjoyable but slightly basic, I felt like it was the best other than that. So I'd probably say it was my second favourite in the series, even with those issues. Now, just to wrap up a few other things, I felt like as part of the story, I know I mentioned it being a bit more innovative, and also that there was other aspects it focused on and sort of being less one-dimensional than most of the stories in the series. Judgment being the exception. Judgment was really interesting and focused on different aspects. I mean, if you haven't played Judgment, then I suppose I shouldn't really give it away, so I won't talk about it, but I would very much recommend it if you're a fan of the series, of playing that story, because that one also was an innovative story. Not as much as this one, but still worth playing. But yeah, I feel like the emotional aspects of this game were sort of another level compared to the others. I feel like it sort of focused much more on family, belonging, and sort of motivation as to why to do things, even more so than the other games in the series. Which, again, I'm not saying that they don't do this at all. They do a good job of it, but I feel like it went up another level. And that was another reason why I feel like this innovation actually did pay off. And they could take the series to another level, possibly, if they get the focus back on the story being at this, this level again. And then what they need to do realistically with the next game in the series would be to have this level of story, but with the gameplay improvements of Infinite Wealth. Then it would probably be the best game in the series, in terms of my opinion. Obviously, it's very difficult to do that. That's why it hasn't been done yet. But hopefully, they can manage it. But yeah, to conclude on just brief other opinions before closing out the video, I feel like for people not as interested in the turn-based combat, I suppose it could be a bit of a problem, because there is quite a lot of combat. As anyone that's played Yakuza knows, you have to do quite a lot of fights to progress. However, there is side contents that you could focus on and not focus as much on the story. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that is a possibility that you could do. And also there is the auto battle system. So if you wanted to, and if you came prepared with lots of items and leveled up, you could decide to do basically the auto battle, which essentially stops you from having to make decisions yourself, for people that really hate the combat. So that is one thing you could do, potentially, I suppose. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because it's not always, doesn't always make the wise choices, but it's up to you, really. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up everything about why this game is innovative and why I've liked it. I don't know whether many people have the same sort of opinion, whether you think any of the other games were even more innovative. I could probably understand that from certain games. Maybe you could argue Lost Judgment was the one which got the combat to the highest level. I think that's probably a fair assessment. Even though it wasn't the turn-based, it was probably the most cohesive combat system, which could be mastered and was really satisfying to do. I suppose you could argue that Infinite Wealth was the one with the sort of the most interesting and the most amount of side content to do. Maybe you could argue that. I quite enjoyed the side content for that. It's just a shame the story was one of the weakest. But yeah, it'll be interesting to hear any opinions, and I'll be looking to do some more videos similar to this in the future. I might do a few other games as well. Thinking of doing a James Bond video for the upcoming 007 First Light, and I might do a Hitman Elusive Target tomorrow. There's one that's coming out, so I might do that too. Anyway, thanks. Bye.